Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, we will be answering your questions. Okay, so the first question here, and I thought that this would be appropriate because I am doing a video series right now talking about Toronto Maple Leafs' prospects, and Derek Padden, I believe I am pronouncing that right here, longtime supporter of the channel, longtime commenter. What do you think about the Leafs all of a sudden swapping to overseas players? Why do you think they went so heavy into overseas players when they haven't before? Was it because they thought this season could be canceled over here and over there they would still be going so they can continue their development, or have the Leafs noticed something? First of all, I don't necessarily know if this is something new that they're doing or that they did this season specifically, but 7 of the 12 players that the Maple Leafs drafted in the 2020 entry draft were not from North America, and I can understand to some people how that would be frustrating because for a number of years, the lack of Canadian representation, Ontario representation, and then Toronto representation or representation from the GTA was lacking on the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I don't think it had anything to do with COVID-19 and the prospect or the possibility at the time in October of the junior leagues here in North America not playing at this time and the junior leagues in Europe continuing to play. And I don't even think it had anything to do with recency bias because the CHL at the time of this year's draft, they weren't playing games for almost 6 months, but the leagues over in Europe were happening as the draft was happening. I believe there was a player that the Maple Leafs drafted where he was literally on the bench in the middle of a game when they announced his name at the podium. Take Roni Hirvonen here for an example, and if you guys are interested in seeing a full scouting report as well as the rest of the players from Finland or Russia, I will leave the playlist linked above the screen here. But this guy in the 2019-2020 season, so in his draft year, was 17 years old, turning 18. And I gotta stress this, he was 17 turning 18, and yes, 5'9", about 170 pounds or so, that's not always accurate there, but 17 turning 18 at that height and weight, playing in a professional men's league with guys who are much older, much bigger, and much heavier than him, a lot more mature. Look, to me, in my eyes, I don't care where he's from, how big, how small he is, if the guy's a player, he's a player. Roni Hirvonen is a very high-skilled player. He's a good skater. He's a defensively responsible forward who can also chip in on offense. This guy has early second round, late first round talent, but fell to the Maple Leafs at 59th overall because he's 5'9" and 164 pounds. And yes, that is a question mark. Yes, that is a cause for concern. But again, he's 17 turning 18 years old right now, and now he's 18 turning 19. He still has an opportunity to maybe grow an inch or an inch and a half, or maybe even 2, and put on about 20 or 25 pounds or so. And then he's not 5'9" and 164 pounds. Then he's 5'11" and 180 or 190 pounds. And that's still smaller for NHL standards, but it's not anything crazy. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be Braden Point, but if you're looking at this guy's height and weight, there's no reason to believe that the other guy can't be successful in the NHL because he's a little bit smaller. And you can't just have all small players in there, but if you read the scouting report on this guy, he plays bigger than what he actually is. It's why we like our GTA and Canadian boys in there. You like to think that they got heart, but other guys do too. And I gotta word this carefully here, but if you're looking at the draft board and you're looking at the best players available in terms of hockey skills, and I'm not just talking about dangling and skating, I'm talking about being able to be big in front of the net. That is a hockey skill. I'm throwing that in there, the overall picture here. If you're looking at the best player available and you're looking at a guy from the Canadian Hockey League that's a little bit undersized, and you're looking at a guy from Europe who's a little bit undersized, well, you're going to take the guy who has experience playing against guys who are older and bigger than them. Because it was a huge question and people made a big deal of it when Mitch Marner was drafted. Yeah, he can put up a lot of points in the Canadian Hockey League, but when he gets to the NHL, he's a small guy. He's going to get flattened. Mitch Marner could score at the OHL level, but when he gets to the NHL and the players are bigger and meaner, can he still do it? And with Roni Hirvonen, you already have that question answered for you because he's already producing quite well in a professional men's league against guys who are older and bigger than him, while being 17, turning 18, and 5'9" and 160 pounds. And I'm not saying that the Maple Leafs should take lesser players just because they have the resume of playing in a men's league already at 17 or 18 years old. No, if the guy from the Canadian Hockey League is better, take that player. The junior leagues in North America possibly not playing, and they aren't right now, obviously was a factor that probably went into the Maple Leafs drafting this way, but that was not the leading factor that went into it. I think that this is a lot more logical and there's no biases in this. It's just, can the guy play against older, bigger, mature players? Yes. Can the other guy play against bigger, older, mature players? We don't know. Our next question comes to us from Leslie here, and they're saying, since Mr. Dubas said Freddie would start the season, if Jack plays well in the first quarter of the season, do you think Freddie gets traded? Would they actually let Freddie walk at the end of the season and get nothing for him? If we take a look at Frederik Andersen by goals saved above expectation by season, so this is taking into account the bad Toronto Maple Leaf defense. He was absolutely stellar in 2016, 2017, 2018, not too hot in 2019. He was kind of bad in 2019, but then again, so was most of the team. But if you're looking at 2016, 2017, 2018, over the last 4 seasons, there is not a goalie in the NHL who has played more games, played more minutes, and faced more shots. And the Leafs really haven't had a backup goalie over the last year and a half. So it's easy to give Frederik Andersen the benefit of the doubt and say maybe 2019 was just a factor of the workload finally catching up to him. But then again, you can also look at his record in goals against and save percentage in elimination games, not just with the Leafs, but also with the Ducks, and that goes against them as well. You got to be able to look at it from both sides. And we're going to have to wait and see with Frederik Andersen as the season goes along. Is this going to be the Freddie of old, now that he's getting regular rest and actually has a backup goalie and doesn't have the mental strain of knowing that he has to be the guy all the time? Is this going to be regular Freddie, or is this going to be 2019 Freddie again? Because it's conceivable to say that Zach Hyman could get anywhere between $3 and $4 million on his next contract. So let's guesstimate $3.75 million on a multi-year deal, probably 3 or 4 years. And now you got $7.8 million left up there. You know, Philip Hallander is a dark horse name there that could be ready in the next year and a half or 2. So I'm just going to throw him there. That's an interesting name. But you got some placeholders there for around league minimum, $750,000. You got $5.5 million left. You know, some question marks on the blue line, as always. Rasmus Sandin, Timothy Liljegren. You might want some more depth there. I don't know. Is Frederik Andersen willing to come back at a discount on a 1 or 2 year deal, possibly? If Frederik Andersen plays the way that we know that he can in 2021, the way that he did the first 3 years that he was here in Toronto, I would consider throwing $5 million at him for 2 seasons. Because then, if you're not bringing back Frederik Andersen, then what becomes the alternative? Jack Campbell and who else? Did they make a trade like the one they originally did to acquire Frederik Andersen? You know, a younger goalie that's ready to take on a bigger role? If you look at the list of UFA goalies here, it's pretty long, but when you actually get into the names and the circumstances and you look at how old these guys are, it thins out really quick. Is Jack Campbell good enough to have a tandem where there's a 1A and a 1B kind of thing? Is he good enough to play 30 or 40 games? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what they decide to do this season, because with Frederik Andersen clearly needing more rest, not being able to play, you know, 60, 65, whatever crazy amount of games, I would like to see Jack Campbell in more games, not just because it's good to give Andersen rest, but I want to know what they have in this guy. Can he play 30 or 40 games in a season? And if he is good enough to be a 1A or a 1B, then maybe you can go with a little bit of a cheaper option. Maybe spend $2.5 million on a goalie, and then you got about $2 or $3 million left to splurge on another bottom 6 forward or another defenseman. And it does really suck that the Maple Leafs haven't been able to develop a goaltending prospect since acquiring Frederik Andersen. Because if you're looking at the goalies that they got in the minor leagues, yeah, they do have a guy like Joseph Woll, who was pretty decent at Boston College, but struggled in his first year with the Toronto Marlies. They do have a guy like Ian Scott, who won Goaltender of the Year in the Canadian Hockey League, not this past season, but the season before, but he was injured and missed the entire 2019-2020 season. So those are interesting names, and then you can add a guy who they just drafted like Artur Akhtyumanov, and you can look at his numbers in the MHL or the VHL and then the KHL in the couple of games that he's played this year, and those can be encouraging, but realistically, he's 3 or 4 years away. But in terms of would they let him walk, I mean, if he doesn't play well, it's a really easy decision. If he wants too much money, this is what they can afford. So the last question here, because I don't want the video to be too long here, but K-Dog asks, if you do a Q&A, what inspired you to start your channel in the first place? I mean, other than our Leafs themselves. And the short answer to that question is I like talking, but the longer answer is that I'd be doing all this research anyway. And like I said, I like talking. you know, naturally you go to school and you're talking with your friends and you get into an argument about which player or which team is better than the other. Maybe a teacher joins in and you go home and you're talking with your brothers or your sisters, your uncles, your aunts, your dad, your grandfather, maybe even your dog. Maybe even your dog likes talking hockey with you. But I just like talking, and I really like hockey, and it's a really good mix. And if you guys enjoyed this Q&A and you would like a question of your own answered, make sure to leave it in the comment section of this video, and the next one that I will do probably next week after Christmas and the holidays, I will get to it. And if I didn't get to your question that you left on a different video, I will look to include it in another one, or maybe it's good enough to just do an entire video on. I don't know. I've done that in the past. But make sure to like the video if you did like it, and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And guys, remember to have a happy holidays and a Merry Christmas.